Okay, so welcome to the deep dive, everybody. Today we're going to be jumping right into it.
Jumping right in.
Yeah, we're diving into the world of global trade
Uh-huh.
and specifically looking at, all these different reactions
Right.
to these pretty big trade moves that the U.S. has been making recently.
Yeah, a lot of action happening.
It is, and the thing is, you sent us this news segment, right?
I did.
That is like definitely satirical.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's poking fun at a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, a little tongue-in-cheek.
But you know what? It's actually pretty insightful.
Absolutely.
Like when you look beneath the jokes,
Yeah,
it really highlights some serious stuff that's going on internationally.
some real dynamics at play.
So our mission here, I think, is to cut through some of that humor
Okay.
and try to figure out, what do all these reactions tell us about the bigger picture of global trade?
Love it.
And then most importantly,
Yeah.
what does it all mean for you, like for the everyday person?
The listener right here.
Right here, listening right now.
Right. So what all about?
That's what we're going to do.
Making it relevant.
Exactly.
So yeah, that source material you sent, even though it's got that comedic take,
Yeah.
it really does give us like a snapshot
Uh-huh.
of how things are right now in global trade.
Yeah.
Like a little window into this complex world.
Right. And we're going to be diving into specific countries, right?
Absolutely.
China.
Yep.
Hong Kong.
Uh-huh.
Zimbabwe, Mexico. India.
It's a world tour.
It is a world tour of trade.
Yeah.
And we're going to try to understand
Right.
not just what they're doing, but the why.
The motivation.
Like, why are they reacting this way? And what are the ripple effects?
with consequences.
the consequences of these reactions.
Yeah, because it's all connected.
It really is.
What happens in one place
Right.
can have these huge knock-on effects elsewhere.
So let's start unpacking some of this stuff
Let's get into it.
with China.
Okay, big player.
Huge player. And the source, right off the bat,
Right.
it does not mince words.
No, it's pretty blunt.
It calls the recent U.S. trade actions
Yeah,
unilateral bullying.
strong word.
Really strong words, and then it goes on
Right.
with this line about, China considering sending back your tariffs with extra soy sauce.
I love that line.
It's funny, right?
It's so good.
But it's a funny way of thinking about retaliation.
Absolutely. It's like their version
Yeah.
of, fighting back.
Right, but in terms of actual real actions,
Right, getting down to brass tacks.
what might China actually be thinking about doing?
Okay.
And how worried should we be about this?
Right. Is this all talk?
Right, because the source does mention some investor jitters
Yeah.
and some economists being kind of worried.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so what's your take?
Well, I think what's really interesting here
Okay.
is the idea of them, having this strategically calculated response.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just going to be random.
Right.
Like the extra soy sauce
Yeah.
kind of suggests that whatever they do, it's going to be targeted.
Yeah. And probably aimed at, certain sectors where it's going to hurt the U.S. the most, but also not hurt their own economy too badly.
So like a calculated move.
Very strategic.
Okay, so what could we see realistically?
So realistically, I think we could see tariffs
Okay.
on, particular U.S. goods
Uh-huh.
where China has other options.
Yeah.
Like they could get those things from somewhere else.
Okay.
So, things like certain agricultural products or
Okay.
maybe certain manufactured components
Mhm.
where they have other suppliers.
They got options.
They've got options. They're not totally reliant on the U.S.
Right.
And, as for the investor, nervousness
Yeah.
and the economists being a bit worried,
Uh-huh.
that's totally understandable because anytime you have like this ratcheting up of
Right.
trade tensions,
Yeah.
it just it injects so much uncertainty
Into everything.
into the global economy.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that can lead to, disruptions in supply chains,
Right.
increased costs for businesses,
Uh-huh.
and it can even, slow down overall economic growth.
And if you think about it, though,
Yeah.
China's reaction isn't just about these specific tariffs.
Right. It's bigger than that.
It's almost like they're signaling
Exactly.
their stance on this
Yeah.
for the long term.
Their long game.
What they see is unfair, and
Yeah.
they're trying to protect their own economic development.
They're not going to just take it lying down.
Okay, so moving on to Hong Kong.
Okay.
The source mentions their tariff trauma support plan
Oh, yeah.
for SMEs,
Catchy name.
very catchy, which includes things like export credit insurance.
Right. Practical stuff.
And even with that little joke about a hug from your local banker,
Yeah.
it seems like they're actually being pretty direct
Yeah.
about wanting to support their small and medium-sized businesses.
They're SMEs.
through all of this.
It's a tough time for businesses.
So why is this kind of targeted support so important?
Well, this gets to a really key point about how resilient global trade actually is. So small and medium-sized enterprises, they're often like the backbone of a lot of economies around the world.
Yeah.
And they're especially vulnerable
to
these, sudden shifts in international trade.
Why is that?
Well, because they just have fewer resources than the big companies to absorb, increased costs or to figure out how to deal with new regulations.
They don't have that flexibility.
Right. They're much more sensitive.
Okay.
So Hong Kong's strategy, even though it has that kind of funny name, it shows that they get it.
Yeah.
They understand that these businesses are vulnerable and need help.
And export credit insurance specifically?
Right.
That acts as like a safety net.
It does. It basically makes sure that those businesses get paid.
Okay.
Even if a buyer in another country can't pay them back.
Like defaults or something.
Exactly. Yeah. So it reduces their risk.
Oh, I see.
And this kind of support helps to keep trade flowing and prevents, widespread disruption. And if we connect this back to the bigger picture, supporting these SMEs this way, it can actually contribute to the stability of global supply chains.
Interesting.
It encourages countries to keep trading with each other, and it prevents, this kind of domino effect of businesses failing when tariffs hit.
So it's a lot more than just helping those individual companies.
Right. It's about the system as a whole.
It's about keeping the system going.
Exactly.
Okay, then we have Zimbabwe. Which the source describes as...
This is a fun one.
Suddenly suspending all tariffs on U.S. goods.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah. And they call it...
Aggressive cooperation.
Aggressive cooperation, which is...
kind of an oxymoron, right?
Kind of hilarious.
Yeah.
And then there's the quip about being broke.
Right.
And those American cornflakes being delicious.
A little dark humor there.
Very dark, but beyond the jokes.
Okay.
What could be the real strategic thinking behind this?
Right. Why would they do that?
It seems kind of unexpected.
It does seem sudden.
And what does it tell us about Zimbabwe?
Yeah.
Their economics.
Their situation.
And their international relations.
Big questions.
What's going on?
So I think what's really interesting here is that smaller economies, they can actually use trade policy as a tool.
For what?
For diplomacy.
Oh.
For building relationships with bigger countries.
Interesting.
So while the source is joking about cornflakes, Zimbabwe's actions probably reflect, a real attempt to try to improve their relationship with the U.S.
Okay.
Maybe open doors for things they need.
Like what?
Like aid or investment or maybe even some debt relief.
So they're playing the long game.
Exactly. Yeah. They're thinking strategically.
So even if their trade with the U.S. is small, suspending tariffs is a gesture.
It is. It's a symbol.
Of goodwill.
Yeah, we want to be friends.
We like you.
Exactly.
And we look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, zoom out a little.
This shows how countries with maybe not a lot of economic power, they can try to, position themselves within this whole global trade landscape.
Find their niche.
By doing things like this to gain favor.
Yeah, aligning themselves with the more powerful countries.
It's smart.
It is. It's a way to play the game.
And the aggressive cooperation thing.
I love that.
It's so funny.
It's like they're trying to make a strong move.
Yeah.
Even though they might not have the strongest hand to play.
Okay, so now let's shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
And talk about Mexico.
Mexico.
The source portrays President Claudia Sheinbaum as really leaning towards negotiation rather than, direct confrontation.
Right.
And they use this image of trying to salsa their way into an agreement.
I like that image.
It's so good.
Very visual.
Yeah, and that's a very different tactic.
Oh, yeah. Completely different.
Compared to some of the other responses we've seen.
Yeah. Much more diplomatic.
Right. So what are the advantages
of
this kind of de-escalatory approach?
Right. Why would you choose that?
Especially for a country like Mexico.
Yeah.
With such close ties to the U.S.
Yeah. Their economies are very intertwined.
Very much so.
So I think the biggest advantage of de-escalation is that you avoid these tit-for-tat retaliatory measures.
Right.
Which can get really messy.
Yeah. Nobody wins.
Exactly. Because tariffs and trade barriers, they end up costing more for businesses and for consumers on both sides.
Right. Both countries get hurt.
And they can also really disrupt those established supply chains.
Oh, yeah. things get messy.
Things get really complicated really fast.
So Mexico preferring negotiation suggests that they understand this.
They're being pragmatic.
Yeah.
They get how deeply connected they are to the U.S. economy. And that salsa image, it implies a strategy of, diplomacy, finding solutions that work for everyone.
Win-win.
Maybe even using, those cultural and historical connections to help them get better trade terms.
More of a soft power approach.
Exactly. It's not about brute force.
And if we consider the wider implications here, this shows that not every country sees aggressive counter tariffs as the best way to respond.
It's not the only option.
So for Mexico, maintaining those stable, predictable trade relationships through talking and diplomacy is probably seen as the most beneficial strategy long term.
It's about the long game.
Okay. So last but not least.
Last stop on our world tour.
We have India.
India.
Which the source describes as
interesting case.
Being relatively quiet.
Yeah, under the radar.
On the trade front.
Peaceful chai cricket and quiet negotiations.
That's how they put it.
I like that.
It's so peaceful.
It does sound peaceful.
So they seem to be kind of the outlier here. In this whole, trade war environment.
All right, everyone else is making noise.
So what could be the reasons for this?
Why are they so quiet?
What's going on with India?
Well, their response, as the source presents it, could be due to a few things.
Okay.
Maybe they just haven't been as directly hit
by the U.S. actions.
Yeah, by these U.S. trade moves as some of the other countries.
Okay, so less impact.
Or another possibility is that they're pursuing their own separate trade agenda through these ongoing but quieter discussions.
Behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes.
So the quiet negotiations suggest that they're still involved.
Yeah, they're not just ignoring it.
They're at the table.
Yeah, they're just being more discreet about it.
Okay.
And if we look at the big picture, India is a huge economy. And it's growing fast. So they have the potential to be a major player in reshaping, how global trade works.
So this quiet approach could be temporary.
Could be.
Or could be their long-term strategy.
It's hard to say for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe they're diversifying their trade relationships.
Okay.
Not putting all their eggs in one basket.
So not relying on any one country too much.
Exactly. And maybe they're trying to position themselves to benefit from any shifts in the global economic order.
Yeah.
Because things are definitely shifting right now.
Like who knows what's going to happen?
It's unpredictable.
So it's a good question.
Right.
Could India become this more central, more stable trading partner?
Yeah.
If the tensions between the other big economies keep going.
It's a possibility.
Something to watch.
Definitely worth keeping an eye on.
Okay, so.
Yeah.
Big picture time.
Putting all these pieces together.
Yeah, let's zoom out.
What this source really shows is this incredible variety of reactions to the recent U.S. trade moves.
Everyone's doing their own thing.
Right. We've got China hinting at this measured response.
Yeah. We've got Hong Kong being proactive about supporting their SMEs.
Yeah.
Zimbabwe making this surprising conciliatory move.
Out of the blue.
Mexico prioritizing diplomacy.
Right.
And India kind of staying under the radar.
Quietly negotiating.
Yeah. And what's really striking,
it gets me,
is how each country's response seems so connected to their own specific circumstances, their own economic realities,
our unique situation,
their political priorities, and even their specific relationships with the U.S.
It's all intertwined.
Yeah, but the common thread here,
and
the source points this out, is that these trade actions are having real consequences.
Absolutely.
All over the world.
This isn't just theoretical.
Right. This is impacting real businesses. Real jobs. And ultimately, the prices of things that we buy.
The stuff we see on the shelves.
Every day. And that idea in the source about tariffs first becoming this dominant approach.
Like the go-to move.
In U.S. trade policy. That's really significant.
It is.
Because it implies that this whole period of trade uncertainty and these different reactions.
And the drama.
The
tariff tantrums, as the source put it. It might be here to stay.
Right. This might be the new normal.
Yeah, we might have to get used to this.